All right, Alexander, let's do a Q&A from the live stream that we had with Dr. Wilmer Leon. And let's begin with Zariel, who says, welcome everyone, and special hello to Dr. Leon. Thank you, Zariel, for that. Elza says, good day, gentlemen. Is it still Victoria Nuland that is needed to be asked who will be the next president of Ukraine?
Good question. I am sure that she is heavily involved in every kind of political discussion and decision involving Ukraine. I think she exercises enormous influence still within the State Department and, of course, by extension in Kiev too.
All right. From Commander Crossfire, would you consider bringing on Io Gray on a live stream? He was recently in Donbass and spoke with people over there, saw things firsthand. Yeah.
Well, we've had him before, and we'd absolutely want to have him again. Absolutely, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, sure. Deidre, thank you for that super sticker. Danielle Yamanovich, good to love the Duran. Wilmer is got to love the Duran. Wilmer is a great guest. Thank you for that.
I think we all agree with that.
Says, FYI, my Brazilian relatives overheard Lula's doctors lamenting. He doesn't follow their instructions to the point. He may be a short timer. Might be prudent to read up on his VP, Geraldo Alckmin.
Okay, thanks for the heads up. We'll bear that in mind.
We need to do an update on Brazil. Stephen, thank you for that super chat. Vesna, thank you for that super sticker. Tyler Durden says, the great powers divided the world by ideologies, Cold War, but now one side has no unifying ideology like it had in communism. How can you, the minds of the people, if you have no ideology? We answered that.
I think Wilmer answered that. I should say, by the way, that Paul Robinson, who's a Canadian academic, has written a long piece analysing Putin's Valdai speech. And he says it's not true that there is no ideological divide anyway. He says that there's a profound ideological divide, and it's about how the world should be structured. And the Russians and increasingly other countries see this as about a conflict between civilizations. The Russians see every civilization as having its own virtues and merits, whereas the West still has a sort of teleological view that it expects everybody eventually to become part of the West. In other words, it expects the West to expand. And that is an ideological difference. And I think that's consistent with what Wilmer was saying.
All right, Tech Wong, thank you for that super sticker. Joseph Blaine, thank you for that super sticker. Valies, thank you for that super chat. And Nick Mastilovich says, Putin has mentioned that there are people parties in the West who have similar values to Putin. Is it likely that these parties will be able to gain support in the West?
I think we did answer that and quite thoroughly, actually. Yeah.
Harmonie Dot says, how do you see the space race as having an effect on the Mackinder doctrine of land powers versus sea powers? Who controls the high ground space, controls the world?
I think that's probably true. I'm not perhaps the best person to talk about these things, but I think you're probably right. I mean, it seems to me that technologies are now changing. I mean, we now have not just, space and capacity to move things fast via aviation, but of course we've got hypersonic missiles, which are getting increasingly long ranges. And so this idea of, being able to dominate sea lanes through surface warships, that may all be changing. I won't pretend. This isn't really my province. I'm not an expert in these things. But, I can see that might be true.
From Gear Backen, thank you for that super sticker. Radovich, thank you for that super sticker. Sparky says, U.S. has been screwing up heyday since Woodrow Wilson.
Mm-hmm. We discussed that at length. Yeah. I mean, Wilmer knows a lot about
Daniel Lee says, yes. Daniel Lee says, Alan Watson, CPC took over 700 million out of extreme poverty. So tell me, how can it be bad? Mao in the old CPC was experimenting social engineering, but got it wrong. Doesn't mean it's destroying China.
Well, I mean, these are important comments. It seems clear. There seems to be some kind of a discussion going on there. All I will say about it is this: the CPC has its faults and its flaws. I'm very well aware of them. Maybe some people feel that it's got more than just flaws and faults. Maybe, many people, and I can understand why, reject its entire system. It has been economically very successful. I mean, I think nobody would dispute this, that, since the mid-1970s, economically, China has transformed. I went to China in 2017. I saw the extent to which it had transformed. And that undoubtedly has brought the CPC a very high level of support within Chinese society. I mean, it is seen there as an extremely successful government.
Sparky says, U.S. is common enemy bringing countries together.
True enough. And again, I think Wilmer discussed that at length, actually.
Yeah. Sanjeva says, I wonder if people who become top managers or politicians have to have sociopathic tendencies to succeed. I just met with our pro-vice chancellor, and I might as well have spoken to a robot, not different to politicians I see.
Yeah, I think again Wilmer discussed this at length. I mean, I think that's a good point actually, Sanjeva, if I can say. But I think Wilmer did talk about that. Yeah.
David S. says, does Wilmer see Biden shaking up his cabinet?
I think he did talk about that too, and he said, we wouldn't make any fundamental difference if he did. And I'm afraid I think we all agree with that.
Matless X says, what would happen if AMLO in Mexico shifted to Russia, China? Would that mean the U.S. would need to bring freedom and democracy to them?
I think again, he discussed that too. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What's Life's Purpose says, what incentive does a Ukrainian politician have to settle for peace when pumped with $100 billion aid, government expenses, all paid by the U.S. and media narrative in favor of Ukraine? War is so profitable.
He has no incentive.
We talked about this
and we've discussed about that too. But I mean, we're going to do a separate program about this. But Putin made exactly that point to Olaf Scholz over the course of a telephone call that they've just had, that there's no incentive for Ukraine to negotiate while it continues to get this kind of aid.
Stephen says, look at how the United States started, freedom from the global hegemon. You don't need an ideology.
Well, again, I think Wilmer discussed that too. I mean, I'm going to say this. I mean, I think the United States in its inception, the founders, did have an ideology. I mean, both the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution are, in terms of their own time, ideological statements. They're repudiations of the monarchical systems that existed in Europe at that time, for example. The monarchical and aristocratic systems.
Jenny B. N says, if UK Ministry of Defense is the same as when I was in, all this winter gear they're sending will arrive in time for summer. LOL.
I think that's probably true, actually. I think that's entirely true.
Raphael says, Putin knows one thing for sure. NATO, the US do not have the guts and do not want to fight Russia and his existing coalition. He calls them intimidator.
Yes, I think we discussed this too, and I think that's entirely right. I do think they do have the guts to fight Russia. That doesn't mean that there aren't some very dangerous people around who want us to. I read articles like that every day, but I still don't think it's going to happen. I think the worst that can happen is that they'll get some proxy, some foolish government in Poland or Romania to try and do it for them. But I don't think they'll want to send their own troops there.
Sanjeva says, thanks for warning against drawing analogies from recent conflicts, especially World War II to the Ukraine War. World War II was only one conflict in millennia of human conflict. To draw accurate parallels, one needs to study a whole of conflicts, not just ones that Hollywood loves.
Absolutely. And I think we discussed that again. Yeah.
Discussed this as well. Yeah. Thank you for that. Matless X says, what is Dr. Leon's opinion of UN Ambassador Linda Thomas Greenfield's recent visit to Africa, where she seemed to have a condescending tone and throwing around ultimatums, disgusting and insulting?
I think he discussed that too, and very well, by the way.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Jungle Jin says, your opinion of Grover Fur? we learned about.
We don't know anything about this person, but we had some. You provided a link afterwards, which was interesting, and it was all about the USSR and the history of that. So it was an interesting subject, by the way. Yeah.
Sanjeva says, and thanks for doing a live stream at a reasonable time in Australia and not at 4 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. Thank you, Sanjeva, for that. Anand says, last summer, geopolitical expert Peter Zihan proposed 2 members of the DoD using sanctions and blockades to cause mass famine in China. How can the global South tolerate such terrorist impulses?
No, I think that's entirely right. I think they are aware of these things. Of course, the Chinese are aware of these things too. I mean, it gets reported in China and in the global South, and I think that's one reason. It's these kind of crazy, terrible ideas that are alienating people from the West in the global South, which is why they're all quietly rooting for the Russians.
Raphael says, Frederick Douglass, as U.S. ambassador in Haiti, was screaming and yelling at the U.S. government to stop destroying Haiti.
Yeah, absolutely.
We discussed this, yeah. Rifi00 says, DW News, satellites show Russia is preparing for a massive airstrike. Free Assange, whistleblower Tarif Simon.
Absolutely. Can I just say something, by the way? I mean, I think Alex has probably seen the same reports. I mean, if this is true, what, all these satellite data suggests, then this is going to be one gigantic missile strike. I mean, I saw one suggestion that it will involve up to 300 missiles. It could be that it's being prepared and that it's going to be timed together with something else. But, the Russians have their own timetable. And, let's not get ahead of ourselves and say that this is going to happen on one particular day or another.
Colbury, thank you for that super sticker. Yo of Bressler, thank you for that super chat. James Hal 9000 says, are the Chinese lockdowns some kind of economic tactic to protect China? Thanks.
I think Wilmer answered. He discussed that, absolutely.
Yeah. Wilmer answers it, yeah. Yeah, Commander Crossfire says, Haiti was a state born out of rebellion against their slavers, thus it has always been a target. Can't have slaves thinking they could change their condition.
Absolutely. And I think, again, Wilmer had much to say a lot about this too.
Yep. Sparky says, someone mentioned the other day the U.S. doesn't do diplomacy, they do gunboat. Yes, they do. Gunboat diplomacy.
Yeah, again, we discussed that too. I think Wilmer and all of us are in agreement with that, yeah.
Yeah. And Mortem Rex says, another thanks from Australia. I have to turn my monitor upside down to watch you guys the right way up, but it's always worth the trouble. Thank you for that.
Thank you for that.
Mortem Rex, thank you very much. And Commander Crossfire says, Wilmer, what's your opinion on Ethiopia?
Right, I think we did talk about this briefly.
Yes, we talked about this. Yes,
we talked about this. Absolutely. I mean, not briefly.
Wilmer
I mean, extensively. Yeah, Wilmer did give his opinion. Exactly. Yeah.
And Jungle Jin says Gromer first spent his career debunking lies about the USSR, Stalin, especially what he considers to be the lies of Khrushchev's denunciation.
I think now that you put it like this, I think this is an academic historian, and I think a rather good one. I'm not going to pretend I'm familiar with him. The last historian of this era, an American historian, by the way, that I've read is J. Arch Getty, and I think he's a very good historian, by the way, on the Stalin era, and very, very insightful. And I think these two seem to be fairly close to each other in some ways.
Claude, thank you for that super sticker. Dita Poing says, given the war on China and Russia, plus the labs in Ukraine and China, I wouldn't discount something deeper with China and the C-19 lockdown.
Possibly. I mean, I don't know. We'll see.
And Sparky says, Democrat hero Woodrow Wilson's militant racism played a part in his decision to invade Haiti on behalf of the New York Bank to keep down Haitian wages. Yeah,
I think, again, Wilmer confirmed that. And, of course, as Wilmer also said, there's a long, long history in Haiti of this sort of thing. By the way, whilst I'm on the topic of Haiti, Quantum of Solace, one of the least good Bond films, admittedly, of the Daniel Craig series. Anyway, it was interesting because he touched on all of that, and he touched upon US policy towards Haiti in a way that was quite critical, which is rather surprising.
Okay, those are all the questions for the live stream with Dr. Wilmer Leon. Thank you very much, everybody. Take care.